If you're over 50 and following a training plan, whether it's from a book, an app, or YouTube, you might be doing everything right and still getting stuck. The truth is, most generic training plans don't account for how your body changes with age. They assume you recover like a 30-year-old. The problem isn't the plan, it's how you follow it. I see this all the time. Runners over 50 training really hard, logging the miles, but instead of getting fitter, they hit plateaus, dealing with recurring injuries or just permanently tired. It's not because you're lazy or past your prime, it's because the plan isn't built for the real you at this point now. So, if your goal is to keep training independently, you need to upgrade how you think about your training. You need to become a better self coach. That means developing 3 key traits that I'm going to share in this video. Often runners stick to a plan no matter how their body feels, but the quickest way to get injured or burned out is not being adaptable. I often say that one of the biggest success points for any runner I coach is someone that is adaptable. Adaptability is a good idea because if not, you end up becoming a slave to the training plan. If you become a slave to anything, in the end, it will ultimately break you. When you're self navigating your training plan, it's just a map. A very important map, much better than just bobbing around running and not really knowing why you're doing your run, which we're going to come to in a moment. Knowing when to push, when to pull, when to do more, when to do less. I often have this term when I'm looking at a training plan, and I'll say to my runners, we've got 3 choices. We can say yes, no, or renegotiate. We can either say, we're going to do as the plan says. We've got 45 minutes building run today. That's what we're doing. We can say, actually, no, that's not good for me today. Perhaps you're tired. Perhaps the legs are aching quite a bit. Maybe a rest day is a better idea today. Or renegotiate. It's a case of, right, okay, we're going to renegotiate with the plan. We're going to look at it and we go, I don't want to take a rest day. But at the same degree, I don't want to do what's in the plan. I'm going to do something different. Now, the reason that a lot of self-coach runners won't do this is fear. So, fear of, in a weird way, letting the plan down. The world has an upside and a downside. You pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. So, a lot of runners are really good at keeping to the plan, which is obviously, in many respects, a massive plus. But like everything, you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. Sometimes that can become a negative. And it becomes a negative when you're not adaptable. When you look at that speed session and you're not feeling it, not because you're not willing to do it, you're just perhaps not well, or perhaps you had a hard day at work. You have to then apply that yes, no, or renegotiate scenario and be not fearful. The reason that runners won't adapt is fear. Quite often, fear of getting less fit, fear of the unknown. The plan feels a certain level of certainty, changing it almost feels wrong. But you've got to remember you're training your body. The first thing you've got to be listening to is your body. And I think this is, as a coach, something that I really do help my runners with. I think a lot of the times runners know what to do. They're just scared to, understandably sometimes, and you're sometimes just giving them a confirmation of something that they already know. Next is intentionality. If you don't know why you're doing each run, you can't adjust. So if something feels off, you're just basically running. You don't have a clear overview of why you're doing what you're doing. And that just doesn't lead to sustainable results, because what you're doing is stimulating your body. With intentionality, what you're doing is purposely embarrassing your body into change. Your body doesn't want to change. It's lazy in the most economic sense of the word. If you sat down for 100 days, then your legs would hardly work because your brain and your body is not required. And because the brain takes so much energy to run the brain, anything that isn't used, it's like a big house. If certain rooms aren't needed, they're just annexed. They just put the white cloths over that, forget that. So the intentionality is there so that it embarrasses your body into change. But what I see with my age group advantage calls when I'm doing them, and I was talking to a runner recently, and he's doing all these runs, different types of runs. And I just asked the question, why are you doing those specific runs in that way? He said, I don't know. It's just what I do. And it's something that's passed down almost, where you just do it. Now, there's a certain amount of truth to that. Success leaves clues. So runners know that certain things that will get them certain results because there's people like me on YouTube and Instagram and books. So you've got all that information. But when you're self coaching, you've got adaptability. You can't really have complete adaptability if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. If you're just doing it because the plan says, but you don't know what's behind that workout. Because that way, and this works backwards to adaptability again, if, for instance, your easy run has to be done conversationally, for anybody that watches this channel a lot, they would have heard me say this again and again. Every person probably knows that they should do their easy runs conversationally. But intentionally speaking, a lot of runners don't do them easy. And the reason they don't do them is they're not really completely bought in to the intentionality of what an easy run is, which is to build up that engine to have more power. Think of an engine that over time can run up a hill quicker because it's got more power, or run for longer, faster, for further because it's got more power. If you had a car and your engine was souped up, you go, wow, it can go faster for longer, it's more economic. And that's what your easy runs can do. Once you have that intentionality, once you are aware of that, and it's almost like a mantra. People utilize mantras for intentionality. They have an intention for their day. And you need an intentionality, an intention for your overall plan. What is it you want that plan to achieve over 13, 16, 18 weeks? What's the intentionality of 4 weeks of that plan? Because each plan is like one of those Russian dolls. You've got the whole, you lift out, there's another bit, and then you lift out, and there's another bit, right down to the little doll. You have the overall plan, and then maybe a 5-6 week cycle. What's the intentionality behind that? The 6 week cycle coming up to your race, the intentionality is going to be very different from the first 4 weeks of your plan. And depending on how you've come into that plan, is this your first marathon? Is it your 20th marathon? How fit are you? How much running have you done? What was your last longest run? All these things will combine to give you a clear view of the intention you have for each stage of your plan. And then what's the intention for this week? And then what's the intention for this specific workout? That's how I look at it for my runners. Why are we doing this? If you spoke to any of my runners, a lot of them would say that I have this saying, is the lemon worth the squeeze? So I'd be looking at something and go, is the lemon worth the squeeze on that? What's the upside and what's the downside of doing this? So with your own training, you have to get as intentional as possible, as clear as you possibly can about why you're doing it and what you're doing and how you've got to do it. That way, your training is going to be much more productive. And finally, self awareness. This one's the glue. Can you tell the difference between being tired and being overtrained? Are you running to fill or chasing your old paces out of ego? You're gasping through your easy runs. That's a lack of self awareness. And when you're over 50 and you're ignoring that feedback loop, that's when things get very sticky. A lot of older endurance runners, self awareness is we are only, any of us are only so much self aware. In fairness to you or myself, utilize coaches, mentors, always have done in my businesses, in my running, in my life, and even in my marriage. There was a saying that somebody once told me that you marry your conscience. I told that to somebody once and they got really cross with me, and I realized they were going through a divorce. What I do know, and I've been married 38, 39 years, is that no one is 360-degree self aware. And I think this is a lot of where coaching is useful. But when you are coaching yourself, particularly as an older endurance runner, you've got to be awake, which is really what self awareness is. I read a hypnosis book many years ago called Trances We Live. The premise of the book was that you weren't putting someone into a trance with hypnosis, you were bringing them out of the trance they were already living. So it's very kind of matrixy. We are in a trance. Now, what I'm trying to get across here is we need to wake ourselves up for self awareness. We will be running old patterns, old habits. And for a lot of us, we know this is the madness of it. We know that some of those habits ain't working anymore, but we keep doing them. On the outside, looking in, somebody else, even looking in at me, would go, "Why are you doing that? That's mad. Why are you doing it?" The reason we do it is either we're completely unaware of it, or we've got a kind of awakeness, we're like rubbing our eyes a little bit. But what we're doing is familiar, and what we might have to do differently is unfamiliar. And when we are in that state, we will quite often go with certainty, even if it's certainty that we already know doesn't work. And this is where a lot of ego running comes in. When I talk about this in the Evergreen Endurance Runner model, ego running isn't about being big headed, it's about arguing with your body. I've mentioned already doing your easy runs too hard, not doing your speed workouts in the right kind of dosages. Most runners end up doing most of their runs throughout the week. It ends up being like a quasi tempo. Everything's either a low level, a mid level, or high level tempo. And that's why the body doesn't get embarrassed into change. It gets compromised, injured. It quite often gets very tired and plateaued, but it doesn't get stimulated into change because the running is pretty one dimensional. I'm not demonizing the grey zone. I'm not demonizing zone 3. I've done a video on that if you want to check it out. But what I am saying is that if you're doing all your running in there, then you're not going to get the adaptations. You're not going to get the changes in your body from that. So the self-awareness is being awake to that. One of the things that I utilize in the Evergreen Endurance Runner model is the perfect pacing model, perfect pacing method, which is where we're looking at utilizing effort. So effort as a scale, 1 to 5, using effort. So easy running, steady running, comfortably hard, tempo running, hard, and then very hard, but on a scale of effort. so that you get that self-awareness straight away, but also utilizing pace as a secondary metric. If I'm running and I want to be running conversationally, the first metric I'm using, is it conversational? Can I talk? So I'm running along, and the analogy I send to a lot of my runners is, if I rang you up on a hands-free headset when you were running zone 2, you would be able to talk to me, but I'd know that you were exercising, because you'd be probably, yeah, Lee, it's been a good day. Yeah. I had a chat with my son a number of months ago. He was running with a headset with an earphone in, and he was chatting to me for about 30 minutes while he was running. He was able to communicate and talk the whole time, but I could hear that there was some effort. So, from an effort point of view, that's zone 2. In that scenario with my son, if he wanted to be really specific, he would know his threshold paces. He could check his watch and know if he's in the top end, mid end, or the bottom end of zone 2, and make a decision how he adjusted. But the first wake up call is the body, because what else gives you more self awareness than your body? I've got nothing against heart rate stats or pace stats. We utilize them in the perfect pacing method. But the point is, the quickest feedback loop on how something is or isn't working is your breathing. If we all stopped tomorrow, we know we'd be in big trouble. So that's a really simple self-awareness mechanism to utilize. Following a training plan isn't bad. It's a great map, but just blindly following it doesn't work. If you want to keep improving after 50, you've got to be the leader of your training, not the slave to it. You've got to know when to adapt and why you're doing what you're doing, and become very self-aware. That's often when runners are chatting to me about coaching and they're not sure if they need a coach. I'm saying, look, you know a lot. What I bring to the table is a lot of knowledge, but I can stand back from you. I can see the boom cycles. I can see the habits. I can see the recurrence of things. It's very hard for an individual to see their own shadows. That does not mean runners can't self coach really well. They can. But these are the things that you've got to be aware of and on top of to do it well. If this all sounds like a lot to juggle, it is. That's why I work with older endurance runners to build personalised plans, adaptable plans that actually work with their bodies, not against them. Even if you choose to keep going solo, I hope this has helped you become more aware of the things you've got to do to get better results, more curious about the changes you need to make as a self-coach runner that are going to make you more effective in those areas. If you are interested in having a guide, having someone that can help you with your training, it's a big ask, isn't it? In the respect that you've got to be able to trust yourself. Is it right for you? You've got to be able to trust me. Am I the right person? And you've got to see if the process, in this case, the Evergreen Endurance Runner model, is right for you. And they're big things. There's a lot of ifs and buts. And that is why I have my age group advantage call, because that call helps answer those questions. It's completely free. And you look at where you are now in your running, where you want to go, what the gaps are. And over about 30 minutes, we discuss what you could do differently. At the end of the call, I'll send you an audit, an action plan for the next 90 days, so that you can apply those actions to your training plan with some insight, similar to what we've been talking about on this video. Of course, my evil plan is some people come on to the program, but it's not a hostage situation. If you're interested in that, somewhere below this video will be a link to book a call. I have limited times because they are quite time heavy, and I normally do them on a Monday or a Tuesday, though sometimes other times are available. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Bye for now.